What's going on again, everybody? First of all, let me just go ahead and tell you that I am running the first part of this video. I am doing it in time lapse here, but the reason I wanted to do time lapse is because I'm actually drawing the tree, and this video is going to focus on how to create the grass. But what I'm doing here now is I'm actually taking and making a big tree in the wall landscape scene here. And what I'm doing here is just drawing a wide trunk of the tree with just a few branches, and you're just going to see half the branches that are going up. And I'm just doing some shading and actually doing some negative drawing here with the eraser to simulate some bark and just make it, look a little bit, have a little bit of contrast in it. And then I'm going to put in the leaves with the same technique, just creating some textures for the leaves. And then when I get all the textures for the leaves there, then what I'm going to do is actually take and probably add some more branches in. Well, actually, I am going to add some more branches in. And just this is one of the, basically a quick tree. It's a quick big tree. Something I wanted to put in the middle of this landscape, and basically it's everything but the house. I'm not drawing the house. This is actually a setup of my neighbor's yard, actually across the street from me, and I am modifying it just a little bit, actually placing the big tree in the middle and putting the smaller tree to my left that you see there, so it is a little bit modified there. And what I'm doing here now is I'm actually going to just create a little bush using the same texture techniques that I do when I create leaves on the trees, and just just trying to get a simple shape of a bush and making some dark highlights in the middle of the bush. As you all know, when you look at little bushes and shrubs and things like that, you have a lot of dark spots that are in there, especially if they're real green, and they almost look black, actually, even when you're outside looking at them and taking photographs of them. But let's go ahead and get into the grass. And what I do is I take my pencil, and I just do a little bit of side shading here to simulate a little bit of the dirt that's on the ground. There's a pretty neat way to actually get into doing some grass after I put a little bit of texture down, a little graphite down. And what I want to do is just, get a little area of dirt, not really dirt, I guess you'd say, but some of the shorter grass. And then we'll get into actually creating a lot of the main grass. So what I'm going to do is I'm doing the same way with this tree, the big tree, as I did with the small tree, just kind of drawing out a little bit of a ground there just to simulate the hill that the tree is actually sitting on. And then I'm going to go ahead and get into the creating the grass once I do that. But this is just a good technique to go ahead and lay down your ground, and then you can just kind of add in your grass a little bit, later on. That way you don't have a lot of grass with a lot of white space on your paper, is the reason why I'm doing this. And one technique that I use when I'm actually just creating the grass is, I'll just take my pencil, as you'll see here, just a few minutes. I'll just take my pencil and I'll just kind of go in a vertical motion with it, really. And I'll just push it up and down, just keep pushing it up and down instead of shading, from side to side like I'm actually doing here, creating the ground, prepping the ground here. And it makes, decent looking grass, actually. There's just many different ways that you can create grass, but this is one of my favorite ways that I like doing it, especially for this illustration here anyway. So what I'm doing now here is I'm actually just taking some more shade here, and I'm actually just creating a light shade, and simulating the actual, going to simulate the grass that's sitting behind this small tree, and it's down just a little bit of a slope from the big tree, the large tree you see there. And this is where I'm just taking my pencil here and I'm just pushing it up and down. The pressure, of course, creates smaller blades of grass. And then the way I go to do this technique without overlapping and making just one big blob of shade of graphite is I go in and I take and I push one line and then I'll push another line on top of it and I'll make it a little bit lighter. Some areas I'll make a little darker. Like this patch of grass I'm drawing out here, then I'll go above it and I'll just create another sequence of vertical shades, and then I'll just go ahead and just keep doing that, putting layer on top of layer, actually layer over layer, not on top, and try not to blend it all with each other here. And at first I thought I would like to leave this little area here like a little small pond, yard pond or something, but I thought, nah, it really wouldn't fit. So as you can see, I'll go ahead and just start shading, and I'll put in some more grass here in just a few minutes on top of that. But what I'll do is just keep doing that vertical motion with my pencil to actually create that grass. And as you can see here, I like to, just kind of zoom a little different here so I can see the overall picture here. And I really don't want to leave the backdrop or the background of everything just white, so I'll wind up putting in some clouds or just kind of shading a little bit of the sky on that. Just plain, you just don't want to leave your drawing plain. I just feel like it's not complete if I try to just leave it plain, so I don't want to leave it plain like that. And after doing a lot of shading, you wind up having to sharpen your pencil again, and when you go back to working again, you have to be careful that you don't use the sharp point of the tip there to kind of create hard lines. And this is the same technique. If you'll notice how I'm just pushing up and down, putting a little bit of pressure to make the grass a little bit darker, and then I'm just going on top of it and just pushing up and down a little more. And the trick to making the dark grass, and where you can see the dark and the light here, is just your pressure, pressure on the pencil that you do. And you press down, going up and down in the vertical shape motion, and then you just let off the pressure a little bit. But right here I really want to put some dark grass around the tree, especially around the bottom of the trunk of this tree. So I use a lot of pressure here because I have to have a lot of pressure to to get darker than the tree bark. That way it can simulate some grass here, and then just trying to simulate a little bit of tall grass, and then I'll bring it back down and to make it short again. And that's just always good. And you notice I go underneath it here in just a minute and just create another area of grass. And that's just basically how you can do simple grass, just doing vertical lines up and down. If you notice, I don't hold my pencil sideways. I just hold it straight up and use the blunt end of the pencil and just go up and down the vertical motion, and that makes real good grass. And you can work it until you're happy with it. Put as much grass as you want to. It's best to always start out with less grass. That way you might want to leave some bare areas of the ground. And then again, you may not. But if you do decide you want to leave some bare areas of the ground, then, that's fine. You got the bare areas. It's better than trying to put grass everywhere and then go back and decide you want some bare areas of the ground to show or simulate some dirt or something. So I always just start out with less. Less is better, when you're drawing landscapes. And then as you see, my same technique that I'm using, just going up and down. Just going up and down in this vertical motion. And it may seem a little bit boring. That's why I kind of wanted to, do this video in time lapse so that you wouldn't have to wait around for me to draw my big tree and my bush and all that stuff. to get to the part of the grass, because this video was really about how you can do grass, just neat tricks how to draw grass. And it really makes it really defined, good and defined, just going straight up and down, putting a little pressure where you want to really bring in some darker grass, and then ease up on the pressure when you want to see that it is grass, but it's not a patch of dark grass. It just helps bring a more realistic look when you're looking at a field, or someone's yard, or whatever you're out to draw. A lot of times, many new artists are afraid of white space. They think white space is really your friend. And as you notice, there's some light areas that I have here in the yard that I'm gonna keep fairly light. Just make enough dark blades of grass just to where you can convey the message that there's grass out here in the yard, or there's grass around the trees, there's grass in clumps throughout the yard here. And that's essentially what you want to do. But white space is okay. You're going to need some white space. White space is part of drawing, and white space is actually good. So I'm just continually just drawing in vertical motion, straight up and down, and creating the grass. And that's basically how you do and create your grass. And I always like to just kind of drop back and look at what I have done. And I have to look at it for a few minutes. I'm just kind of picky, and I critique myself pretty hard, I guess. But that's when I just want to make sure I'm finished with one element before I start another element. But there's times I'll go back and work on another element when I decide I'm not happy with it. But as you see here, all the white space that's behind the trees, that's not a complete drawing to me. To some, you might want to leave it that way, but it's just completely white. So I want to actually just simulate the sky a little bit. And the best way to simulate the sky is just do the shading as you normally would, but make sure you're using the blunt end of the tip, and just do some light shading. As I say over and over again, it's always best to start out and do light shading. That way, you can always get a little darker if you need to get a little darker in some areas. But I always start out light, especially when I do the sky. Whenever you're creating the sky, you're going to wind up, when you're finished laying down your graphite, you're going to wind up taking either a Q-tip or a blending stump or a chamois, or just whatever your blending tool is that you have at the time. You're going to actually blend the graphite to give it a little better contrast, and it's going to actually darken it up just a little bit. That way, if you start out light, you can do some light shadings, and when you get to the blending stump and start blending, then you're going to have about a good mid-tone, something that you'll want. You don't really want a real dark sky, dark, but you just want to convey the message. And this is a freshly sharpened pencil that I had sharpened. Have to erase my hard spot there, and there's times when I just sharpen a pencil, if you're not careful, if you don't get your angle just right, you're going to create a hard spot or a hard line. But you can always take the kneaded eraser, as I did there, and just erase that out. Matter of fact, I do that quite a bit, especially when I'm working on my sky. I always take, and time or two I'll make a hard line, because after you shade a good area of the sky, your pencil, you have to sharpen it. You have to kind of remove the old dirty graphite that's off the edge of the bottom edge of the tip there, because a lot of times, you do a lot of shading so long, and eventually, you're not getting any shade at all. And then I have to resharpen my pencil, and creating a sky, like I did with a freshly sharpened pencil. Then I Made another mistake here, and I've got to erase this out. The kneaded eraser is really good for that. I'm always partial to the kneaded eraser because it's just so light, and you can just swipe it a time or two, and you can get rid of any imperfections that you want to get rid of. As opposed to using a regular eraser that you used to use at school, put on the end of the pencil, those seem to be too hard for me. I'm not really crazy about those, but the kneaded eraser does things like this. It will just, clean it up real nicely. And I use the kneaded eraser. When I close my book, a lot of times I'll get a little graphite on it. When I open it back up, it may have smeared a little bit, and I'll just take my kneaded eraser and go over it, and then I'll kind of get rid of everything. But you see how light the sky actually is. There's a light shade, here, and some areas may be a little bit darker, but still overall it's not too dark. You don't want to get too dark, like I said, because you just want to use your blending stump or your other blending tools, and you'll darken it up once you start to blend it. But one of my favorite tools to use for blending, is the blending stump. It's a great tool. I always, I don't know, I keep several of them around. I use the tortilla occasionally, but I try to use the blending stump, at all times whenever possible. Because tortilla sometimes can be hard on your paper if you're not careful. You might mess the tooth of your paper up, and you could, damage your drawing. It would be really bad to take and mess your drawing up, especially after spending a lot of time on it. So here you can just take the blending stump, and you can go around like I'm doing here around the trees when you're creating the sky, because it's going to have a different shade once you blend it than what your trees are. So you're not actually going to class the graphite of your trees together. You're still going to be able to tell, hey, this is the sky, even when you go in between the branches of your trees. And that's what you really want to do. It makes it look a whole lot better than, you don't want to leave like a white glow, on your paper around the edges of your tree. That's why it's always good when you're blending landscapes, especially around trees. It's always good to get as closest to your object as you can get. That way you won't, look like you just got a glow around the tree or something. And to me, that just doesn't look good. It doesn't look professional enough, to me. So I try to just go in and blend it the best I can. And when you get in tight spots, like between a lot of small branches, and you want to blend the sky, sometimes your blending stump may be too wide, too thick, and that way, then you can use a tortilla and get in there and, and do what you want to do. Now, blending the sky like this, I always, like to purposely just leave some areas that's real light shaded, and then some areas that are dark shades, because that really gives you a good simulation of the sky. Because the sky is not one perfect or one continuous tone of blue. It's not, one continuous tone of anything. You usually have clouds that's dancing around in the sky a little bit. And going all the way down to the tree, to the ground of this big tree here, that's basically simulating the sky off in the distance. You kind of get that effect. That's why you want to, use a wide area of your paper when you're doing your sky, because it just kind of simulates, the distance. Looking at this picture here, for example, it kind of gives your imagination something to think about when you're looking behind the tree. You can picture maybe some more grass going on behind the tree. But that about wraps up, this drawing. I'm going to stop where it's at now. I'm pretty happy with it where it's at now. I have my sky blended and have everything the way I want it. And I think it looks like a fairly nice little landscape wall and a yard. It's just something different that I wanted to get into and wanted to draw, and um, it's real nice. I mean, I like drawing different things and trying different techniques. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, uh, please go ahead and subscribe. You'll be notified whenever there's new videos available. And you can visit visionsingray.com, visit my website, and then you can go from there and visit my blog. And I really hope you enjoyed drawing or being with me while I have drawn this landscape wall and this design here. And I hope you learned something from it as well. So if you will, give me a thumbs up if you liked it and learned something, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.